All right, Brock, we're live on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing great. For the few people that don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
My name's Brock. I live in Kelowna, British Columbia. I am a professional triathlete on the Canadian national team. I train and race under Balance Point out of Kelowna, coached by Luke Way and Dr. Andrew Sellers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How did you get started with triathlon in the first place?
So I actually started triathlon. I did my first kids race when I was 7 years old. So a long time ago. Um, it's kind of crazy because it feels like um, lots of the athletes I race against, I've actually been doing triathlon for longer, even though only been professionally doing it for, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. But
Mm.
yeah, so my sister did a kids race when she was 9. And then, yeah, my parents just put me in them every summer, and I started doing them just as a hobby. And then moved here in 2014 and started working with Luke then. So
2014, so it's close to, I guess, 8 years working with Luke now.
eight years, yeah, working with Luke. Yeah.
How old were you when you started working with him?
I was 13. Yeah.
13. Okay. Was it a big shift from what you were doing before you moved to Kelowna and started working with Luke?
Yeah. So uh, I was doing triathlon in the summertime in Alberta, where I lived at the time, growing up, and then I was also part of the swim team there. So I was mainly a swimmer who kind of just did triathlon as cross training in the summer.
Mm.
So I was swimming 6 days a week. Large volume in the pool, which now has actually helped me a lot, definitely in my triathlon career. Um, so yeah, most of my volume was just swimming volume, and then yeah, it was basically the first time that I had actually started training on the bike was with Luke when I got here. I had really no idea what I was doing. I was a good any races that I would do, I would run well and I'd swim well, but I had no idea what I was doing on the bike. So Luke really helped me with that and kind of taught me the structure of how to train properly. Because like any kid, you just think you got to go as hard as you can all the time. So
Yeah, we had a similar conversation with Jameson when I had him on the podcast, and
oh
uh,
yeah,
yeah, he thought he was training great before he went to see Luke, and then figured out that he was probably running too fast most of the time and slowed
yes,
down. But in the end, that paid dividends years down the road. I want to come back on the swim. You talked about your background in swimming. It seems to it seems to be, at least for me as an outsider, and I'm not very well versed in the sport of triathlon. I started following it really at the beginning of this year, but it seems like those like yourself who have a background in swimming definitely excel, or at least get out with in front of the pack in the swim. And those who don't have that background and maybe didn't weren't lucky enough to train to swim properly in their first years in
mm,
triathlon seem to struggle a lot. And it's, I guess, at the highest level now, it's you get penalized quite a bit if you're behind on the swim. So can you talk about those dynamics in triathlon in general?
yeah. So yeah, like I said, I was very lucky to start in swimming early. I think swimming is more technical than the biking and the running. If you run a lot, you'll generally just get faster at running. If you bike a lot, you'll get faster at biking. But if you swim a lot, you might actually just reinforce bad habits and you might even get slower. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very, very technical sport. And yeah, I was very lucky to start early, especially in the draft legal triathlon, though, is where the swim, it seems, is kind of more crucial
Can
because
you
the
can you
path ra-
explain the yeah? Can you explain the difference between draft legal and the alternative?
for sure. Yeah. I do the Olympic style ITU racing. And so the swim is 1,500 meters as opposed to 3.8 in the Ironman. And yeah, we're all, it's 70 men starting around a 1 or 2 lap course. And it's pretty much full gas right from the start. The first buoy is usually around 300 meters out from shore. So yeah, you have 70 men trying to aiming for 5 square meters, 30 meters out or 300 meters out. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of carnage there. So you have to get out fast. And then also if you are behind, coming out of the water, that's just accentuated that gap as soon as you get on the bike, right?
Mhm.
5 seconds turns into, 100 meters and on the bike, and then that quickly gets kind of turned over into more and more, just because, yeah, there's strong riders all throughout, right? And it's a Tour de France style ride where you got packs and team dynamics, not necessarily team dynamics, but you are working together to try and lengthen your lead with other people until the run comes. So yeah, I think in Ironman though, it seems like there's a lot of more good swimmers coming up with like Sam Laidlow and those guys. So because of that, I think it's also becoming prevalent that you have to be good in this more good in the swim than in past years, and it's starting to hurt some of the other guys like Sam Long or Ditlev. But yeah, so it's good to see the sports growing, not just in ITU, but also in Ironman, starting to be, you got to have all three down, which is really cool, I think.
For those who don't have a background in swimming, what advice could you give, a triathlete listening in who wants to get better at the swim but can't figure out how to do that?
Um, so for me, I as a kid, you get a lot of you're in some club, you get a lot of feedback, and you're just kind of going with what you're told. But when I started training with Luke specifically in 2014, I actually I was still swimming with the swim club at the time, but I completely stopped in 2016 and was solely trained by Luke in the pool as well.
Mhm.
And we kind of stripped down my stroke completely, realizing that I needed a lot more kind of strength in the pool.
What
Just
does
because,
strength in the pool mean?
yeah, so I was a very kick dominant swimmer.
Okay.
And in triathlon, obviously, you want to be able to save your legs a lot for the bike and the run. So for me, it came down to a lot of improving my body position. So in swimming, you want to be as high as you can on the water, saving energy. Um, yeah, every Luke says it all the time. I'm just trying to remember every liter of water extra that you're carrying in terms of your body position
Mhm.
is just like it's exponentially um, just more drag in every stroke that you're taking. So it's about minimizing drag. So for me, we did a lot of sculling actually, which is very tedious and not very exciting. A lot of slow, just working on my catch, working on my body position, kind of the first part of the stroke, making sure
Mhm.
that there's no slippage. It's all about pressure in the water. So you have to be very conscious and kind of deliberate. You want to be nice to the water because the water will be mean back to you if you're not nice to the water. So yeah, you want to kind of try and learn to be as streamlined as possible and really just kind of focus on every bit of energy going into forward movement. Um, and so, yeah, we did a lot of really had to slow it down. And I actually didn't do much speed in the pool for a couple of years there, just because we were working very closely with my both strength, but just, pull sets and working on upper body strength,
Mhm.
but also just really, really honing in that technique. There was one set where we would do, it was just 500s on repeat, and the set had no end to it. We'd be in the pool for 2.5 hours, 3 hours if it took. And we basically, for me, we knew that 14 strokes a length was very hard for me at the time. And so I had to hold a perfect 14 strokes a length. And the set only ended when I got two 15 strokes a length in a row. So obviously that means I'm losing coordination or losing strength or losing ability to maintain it. And so yeah, sometimes we do 7K swim, just going until basically I was too fatigued or just losing the ability to hold it. So yeah, it took a lot of long swims, a lot of just like deliberate work, but I think it's very crucial to have that, especially with the swim being so important in triathlon. So
You talked about not doing any speed work in that time. I guess you were still competing in triathlon in that interim.
yes, yeah, still competing. We
Did
would
you feel
still
any
obviously
did you
sorry.
sorry, did you feel any negative effects of the lack, quote unquote, of speed work in the pool on your swimming and competition, or was that not a factor?
So we would still do lots of most of the swims were kind of technical based, like I just talked about. But we would still have at least one swim a week where we do some, sprint 25s or something like that, just to be able to maintain like coordination, because that is obviously something that you still need. You still need to be able to turn over the arms fast, um, because you don't want to get into a race and you haven't swam fast at all, right? Um, but I think it was crucial to try and uh, learn that early on, because I am, with all my years in swimming, it's easy for me to get the speed back as well. And so we really just kind of focused on that for a while, because we knew it was going to be crucial when I started racing World Cup or World Series or whatever. And so, yeah, as I started racing more, and my body position and everything has improved so much, that now we can do a lot more, speed in the pool or focused kind of pace work. And so I wouldn't say that it negatively affected. Obviously, if you're doing more race pace stuff, you're going to feel better at race pace. Um, so yeah, we've always, with everything in terms of our program, is long term focused, right? So if it means sacrificing a temporary gain in terms of, a race here or there early on, we just always kind of have looked at it in terms of, it's a long term sport, and yeah, you can't really get too focused on U14 provincials, right? When you have a goal of going to the Olympics or winning the Olympics or whatever it is. So
Did you always have that long-term mindset, or is it something that you developed more with Luke?
um, I think when I started with Luke, I always had a long-term mindset in terms of like the goals that I've had. Um, uh, I started First sport I did was hockey, and it was always, want to go to the NHL, and like it was all the way in that, and then quit hockey for swimming eventually. And yeah, it was, I want to go to the Olympics in swimming. I want an Olympic gold medal. And then it was, all right, now I'm doing triathlon. Now it's got to be triathlon all the way in. So I've always had the goal based long term goals or long term mindset. But Luke has really helped me to dial in the kind of long term in terms of when it comes to everyday training, I think, and how I have to approach that. You can't get too caught up in every day. There's going to be good days and bad days, and you just have to focus on the task at hand each day, right? um so yeah, no, Luke and I had a lot of discussions when I was like 14 and 15, and I was like, no, I think I should really be like running harder today, because like I gotta get ready for this race. And Luke was like, no, we gotta stick to the plan, Rock. Stick to the plan. We're making a 24-year-old champion, not a 14-year-old champion, right? So yeah, but he's definitely helped me with that. So I think I'm getting better, getting more patient, which is kind of very key, I think.
Definitely in a sport like triathlon. Going back to the swim, you talked about 14 strokes a length, which was hard for you. Give us an idea of what a normal range is, what a fast range is. How do we work with strokes and lengths in the pool?
So something that we did back then when we were calculating is um, we called it 100% efficiency. So what we would do is we calculate our 100% efficiency by taking our height and then the distance of the pool. And then you divide the distance of the pool by your height to get your number of strokes that would be 100% efficiency. So for me, I was probably 1.76 meters at the time. So 25 divided by 1.76, I think, was 14. And so we learned that basically I should be able to, and it seems to be pretty accurate across all swimmers, that should be their 100% efficiency. And so for me, yeah, that was 14. But I think most non-swimmers are going to be taking um, pretty much double that, 25 or more for if you're, just a recreational swimmer. Um, but if you also watch the Olympics, the 1500, those guys in a long course pool, which is actually harder because you're you don't get the flip in the middle, so there's actually a little big buffer there of 5 meters, however long you're pushing off the wall, and they're doing around 20, 21 strokes a length. So that calculates to around 10 or 9, which is pretty impressive. So obviously I'm a triathlete, so I don't quite have that efficiency, but yeah, that's kind of how we calculated it. And then from there, we try and get more efficient at that. And now I can easily do 12 a length for a long swim if I'd like to.
So the idea is that essentially with each stroke, you're moving your body the length of your own
Yes,
height.
of your own height, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. It's okay. Yeah.
it comes down to efficiency, I guess, right? In the open water, often it's choppy, so you can't actually do what we call like a DPS or a distance per stroke, like we're practicing in the pool. But to be able to settle in to a distance per stroke and get better at, now we do sets where we'll try and maintain our distance per stroke at a race pace. So I'll be trying to do 13 strokes a length at race pace or whatever, 14, if I'm going a little faster. So being able to do that means that, let's say it was a slightly calmer day or you're not on feet and you're actually leading the swim, you're able to conserve energy and really kind of just lengthen it out, almost like a pool swimmer would, and not be stuck in just using, everything you can in the choppy water. So it's one more way to get onto the bike feeling a little bit better, and ready to go. So
how is your swim training distributed throughout the year in terms of percentage of swim in the pool, percentage of swim in open waters, and then is that ratio ideal in your mind, or is it just logistically what makes the most sense at this point in time?
So yeah, I swim 6 days a week now, average about 4 kilometers a day. So I'm swimming around between 20 and 24 kilometers a week. Um, in the summertime, this last year, we were doing 4 pool swims and 2 open water a week. I've done as much as, well, in 2020 when the pools were closed, we were doing all 6 in the open water.
Mm.
I actually saw a large improvement though that year in terms of my ability to kind of maintain a good pace in the open water, because it is a lot different, and you kind of learn it as you go in the open water, and there's a lot, timing your strokes with waves and things like that, that you would never get in the pool. But I think at least one, probably more than one a week in the open water is crucial. I think we've done less and less open water in the last kind of 4 years, just because it took a while where I really needed to be doing that for most of my swims in the summertime, at least, to really just kind of learn how to swim better in open water, because it is a different sport than pool swimming. But I think as I've gotten better at that, we're able to do more specific sets in the pool. So we still try and keep most of the swims in the pool, and then do at least 2 open water a week, which I think is ideal for me now. But if you are a pool swimmer, you might want to do 5 or even all of them in the open water in the summertime, just to learn it for the triathlon, if that's what you're wanting to do, I would say. So, yeah.
Do you have a type of swim session that you particularly enjoy, and then on the flip side, one that you despise?
uh, yeah, swimming is definitely, I think, because I've done it the most, it's my least enjoyable of the three. Um, but I still enjoy swimming a lot. I think a swim that I would really enjoy would be a swim around race pace or around like a threshold pace. I like just settling in and doing, 4 kilometers of work at a threshold pace is kind of fun. You're not going too hard, so you're not, not feeling like you're dying, but you're also really enjoying kind of dialing in that race pace. And then a swim I might not enjoy as much would be just, yeah, probably like 14 strokes a length for 8K or whatever. That would be that would be less enjoyable, just because it's more boring, I guess. But I think they're all crucial. So you just kind of have to look at it in terms of um, trying to achieve a goal or a stimulus for the day, and then yeah, just kind of stay focused on that. But definitely I enjoy the higher intensity swims more, just because it's more exciting, I guess.
Out of your 6 swims per week, how many are on the higher end of the intensity spectrum, and how many are on the lower end?
I would say 2 a week are more high intensity. And then the other ones would be starting some with like drills, sculls, whatever it might be, that we've identified I need to work on, and then more strength or strength based like pulling sets or kicking sets, things like that, or just long swim sets. We do one swim a week in the summer of just a long swim in the open water. And so yeah, every day has a specific goal, but then two a week would be kind of let's say a race pace session and then an overspeed session as well, because that's also crucial. So two a week, I'd say, and then the other four are kind of yeah, just they'll have their own goals, but they're not as high intensity.
Is that volume of swimming, weekly volume, common for an athlete in your category at your age? Is that what your competitors and teammates do as well?
Yeah, I'd say that most ITU athletes, that is pretty common, but around 20 or 25 even. Um, for me, because we were doing so much technical work for quite a few years there, I was only swimming around like 13 kilometers a week for a while, just because each session was so much smaller, just because you can't cover as much distance. And if you're swimming a 90-minute session and most of it is, drills. Um, yeah, I've actually ramped up my swimming a lot in the last 12 months, I'd say. Um, but that's also helped me, I think, because now that my technical ability is in a position that we can just handle more volume and not sacrifice that. Because first and foremost is always technical, especially in the pool. So I'd say it's pretty standard to swim that much. But yeah, it's definitely helped to ramp it up a little bit. Some of the other guys on my team um, won't swim quite as much, but I'd say the closest would be Jameson. He's swimming pretty close to what I'm swimming, and we do train together pretty much every day. So we do lots of the same sessions, but again, it is very individualized in that if you're falling apart that day in terms of your ability to hold your stroke, then it's probably better to shut it down or do something else that's a little bit different and still get a stimulus out of the day without destroying yourself.
How often what might that happen on a swim? Say in a month, how many times might you have, like I said, a suboptimal day where you can see that technique might be compromised and that you might not get the best out of the session if you kept going?
Um, yeah, so I would say I never totally stop a session, but I would maybe just switch up the goal of the session a little bit and do something a little bit different, or just not like push it as much. And I'd say, um, I mean, it's rare that I'm swimming and I'm feeling great because we're doing so many hours a week, right? Um, but I would say probably um, once every two weeks, I might actually switch one of those two hard swims and do something a little bit different, or just back off the pace time a little bit if we're going for a specific time. Um, but I think it all depends. Like, yeah, when we're in the summer months, especially, we're training, probably averaging close to 30 hours a week in of training. And so, yeah, like I said, I mean, it's pretty rare to feel good. And usually the swim is the one where you'll kind of just feel it the most, just like you'll feel a little bit sluggish or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's crucial to be getting in enough calories before those workouts, and also lots of the time we try and do the swim first to avoid that as well. So yeah, but I would say once every like 2 weeks, there's like a swim where you're really not feeling it, and we have to switch up a little bit. But
Is that something you do reluctantly, or do you know it's for the better and you don't have an issue to switch it up and, like you said, either change the focus or change the workout a little bit?
no, I don't think I'm reluctant about it. I'm fine to change it up. Same thing for bike and run. Like there's days where I'm at the track and it's just not going good, and Luke and I chat about it, and we'll change it up, do something a little shorter, a little more bursts or whatever instead, if I'm not feeling the ability to like hold a pace for long or whatever we're going for. I think it really just comes down to like every day. Like if Luke is at the session, then we'll just chat about it. It's good to be um, kind of, yeah, just open about it. It's not a bad thing if you're feeling tired, right? It's the result of training. So yeah, we'll chat about it. Luke will just ask you before every session, you know. It's the first thing he says in the morning is how you feeling, right? We'll chat about it. How you doing? Um, spirits are high. Are you feeling good? You ready to go? You tired? What's sore? Right? And asking the questions. And I think that's crucial because the numbers might be good sometimes, but you never know exactly what that means, right? You have to also kind of filter that through how you're feeling, I think. And so that's important as well.
So we've talked about the swim in detail. If we touch on the bike now, since it's the
Mm-hmm.
logical continuation of that. So you said
Yeah.
you didn't know how to bike at the start.
Yeah. Well, obviously I knew how to bike, but I wasn't, I think the biggest lacking thing was my technical ability.
Okay.
I grew up in a small town of 3,000 people in the prairies. So there was one road to ride on, and it was out and back. And yeah, so I didn't learn how basically to turn corners. Like it was yeah, a bit of a problem at the beginning, but we had to work on that a lot. And honestly, I'm still learning as I'm going. I wish I'd been on a bike when I was, um, 5 or 6, doing like um, jumps and stuff like kids in BC are.
Mhm.
But I wasn't. So
Do you
I'm
think that
learning
would have
as I'm
helped?
going. What was that? Sorry.
Do you think that would have helped you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, I know just like lots of kids or even young juniors that we've had on the team here, and yeah, lots of them can. I mean, they're doing wheelies and just like riding around, doing crazy stuff like all the time, and they can track stand at the stoplight for 6 minutes, whatever, if we have to wait. And I'm just like, no, I'm gonna put my foot down and just like sit here. Not that I'm a bad technical rider, but yeah, it's just like skills like that with that I think are like they're cool to have, not necessarily race essential, but um, yeah, it'd just be being that comfortable on the bike would be awesome. Um, and it's something I'm working on obviously every day. But yeah, that would definitely help. What was your question again about that?
It was just about the beginning of you writing, and I guess from the outside, we don't necessarily realize the technical aspect of going really fast and then having to take corners. Can you talk us through that a little bit more for those who don't spend that much time on a bike and race on such courses?
Yeah. Yeah. So in the ITU style, usually there's 8 laps on the bike. And so they're 5 kilometer laps, which is basically a criterium style
Mhm.
race, like you might see in cycling. And so it's very fast paced. You're kind of obviously you have to know the course beforehand, which is crucial in the week leading up. You're analyzing every corner where the wind's coming from, all of that. Um, but in the race, you'll get better each lap at how to ride the lap. So you'll be like, okay, I need to put power down in this section. I need to be taking this line on this corner. Um, this is where I can move up. This is where I might get pushed back. This is where oh, this guy's riding it well. I need to stick to this guy's wheel. This is where I can make my move. Kind of, you're just learning as you're going. And yeah, it is very, very technical, and you're riding so such close quarters with other guys, right? So it's not uncommon that you're actually rubbing shoulders with guys in the pack, and uh, yeah, it's dangerous, and so you have to be very aware. You have to be on if you're not thinking for 1 second, it could all go wrong. So you really have to be focused, and yeah, the technical aspect is very crucial. So we do a lot of training like in parking lots in the summertime, just practicing like mini criteriums as a group, taking corners at 55k an hour straight into a 180, trying to like just learn how to do it as quickly as possible, whatever we can do. So yeah, I actually partway through the summer I identified that as a bit of a limiter after one race where I was exposed a bit. And so we did a lot of just practice in the parking lot this summer, just really dialing that in. And then the last couple of races, I actually felt like it was a bit of a strength after that. I was able to make up time or actually just get a little bit of time on people in the corners. So yeah, it's just about I guess identifying those limiters and then trying to add them into your program. But yeah, the technical aspect is just so crucial in ITU. I think in Ironman, obviously you're in aero position for so long, you can basically just get off the trainer and ride. But yeah, you really can't do that in ITU, or you will get exposed, or just you're not used to that punchy power as well, which might be detrimental. So
Over the course of a week, how much bike sessions might you do, and how are they distributed? Same kind of question as with the swims.
yeah, so I'm riding three main bike workouts a week, and then a couple of frequency rides as well, just for added volume.
Mhm.
So on a Monday in the summer, I'll probably ride 2.5 to 3 hours. Excuse me, and that would be kind of long warm up. There might be a set in there about an hour long, I would say, with more around my balance point or my threshold, as some like to call it. And then Tuesday would be an hour or so, an hour and a half maybe on the bike just for frequency, because that is usually a run based day for me.
Mhm.
Wednesday would be another larger workout of 2 to 3 hours. Um, and then Thursday I don't ride. Friday would be more frequency on the bike, an hour and a half or so, and then Saturday would be my long ride where we're going minimum 4 hours up to 5 or 6 on the weekend, and then Sunday I'll take off as well. So I guess that's 5 rides a week.
Mhm.
Usually it's around 10 or more hours in the summertime a week on the bike, which is pretty typical, I think, for ITU. Um, uh, Maybe a little bit more on the higher volume side, but having 1 or 2 a week where there's some high intensity, um, kind of those Mondays and Wednesdays, and then trying to get in the volume on the other days is crucial, because obviously the structural development of biking and running never stops, no matter how good you are, right? There's always room for improvement in terms of cardiac structure, respiratory, mitochondria, everything. It's just all crucial. So maintaining that throughout the whole year, I think, is very crucial. You can't stop one thing and just train based on speed or whatever you want to do. Um, the structural improvements need to happen constantly. So
You talk about frequency rides. Can you describe what that means?
um, yeah, so frequency, I guess I'm just saying that just maintain the volume on those days. It's just a short ride to make sure that you're still getting in a bit of a stimulus, like a zone two kind of thing on
Mhm.
those days. So it's short, but you're still kind of just conditioning that system a little bit on those days. Um, yeah, so I do the same thing on the run, and I guess not so much on the swim because those are longer sessions, but I'll have 2 or 3 runs a week where they're just 40 minutes, just to try and it's just added volume. They're short enough that you're not really getting that much fatigue from the session, but you can stack it on top of other sessions and still get enough volume in, and without overdoing it, but getting the stimulus that you want. So they're just short sessions, and we just refer to them as frequency sessions just because they're short and they're just added throughout the week here and there.
What type of, you talked about threshold type sessions? Do you guys go towards some higher intensity sessions as well at certain times of the year, or maybe throughout the year? How do you organize that intensity distribution?
Yeah, so in the summertime, I like to do the kind of more threshold session. We'll do this summer one that we did quite a bit actually, and I liked a lot. Was 6 times 12 minutes at a threshold type pace on the bike. Um, Trying to hold that trying to hold that wattage, but I was doing the sessions are mainly based off the Moxie monitor, and also just looking at heart rate as a way to see how I'm doing on the day. Um, and so that would be I guess that's a little over an hour worth of threshold on those days. But again, if I'm not feeling great, I might do 4 sessions or four instead of 6 intervals. That would be on a Monday is kind of what I did in the summertime. And then on the Wednesday would be more high intensity. So actually lots of the days on the Wednesday, I would do a Zwift race. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with Zwift. But yeah, just something to add a little bit more punchy power. And those were also the days on Wednesdays where we would go into the parking lot and do something super high intensity as well, to just try and get the over, yeah, just that over speed on the bike as well, because that's also crucial, obviously. So yeah, those two hard rides a week, and one of them being at threshold, one of them being over, and then the rest being just building that zone two structure. So
Do you have a favorite type of ride on the bike if you had to choose one?
maybe if you're feeling good, it would be the threshold session. Otherwise, probably a long ride on the weekend is obviously fun. Yeah, we do. There's one ride that we do here quite often in the summer. You'd go from Kelowna across the bridge, and then you take the west side road all the way around to Vernon, and it's kind of like a loop of the lake, I guess we call it the lake loop, um, and that's about 160K. And so we do that on the weekends. If we're feeling good, we'll sometimes add a little more and make it 200. But yeah, that is a fun one. And obviously, there's lots of places to stop along the way and refuel. So that's a fun one.
Talk about refueling on a long ride like this. What are the do's and don'ts if you want to make it a successful long ride?
Yeah, so the don't is definitely just don't avoid calories on the ride for sure, because you will bonk. And normally we're also swimming, doing a swim and a run on those days as well. So yeah, you have to take care of yourself, because you always have to be thinking at least 4 hours ahead. What am I going to be doing in 4 hours? I need to be preparing for that right now. So yeah, on a ride like that, you're burning anywhere between, well, for me, around 5,000, 5,500 calories on that ride alone. And that's hard to get in the day if you're just eating, right? So it's a lot of liquid calories. I'm trying to take in around at least 80 grams of carbs an hour, which is not a lot, but I'm usually doing over 100, I would say, which is where I generally feel the best on the bike. Not avoiding carbs, because obviously you're going to need them as you're riding. And then yeah, just basically you don't want to ever feel hungry on the ride as well. So we'll stop at the gas station and get something to eat here and there. But yeah, it's not always the 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 Instagram perfect clean calories that people post. But I think the reality is that a lot of times you just need calories. And when you're burning 5,500 plus swimming and running, it's a 8,000 calorie day. You can't eat 8,000 calories of chicken and rice. So you have to eat something at some point.
Yeah, like Olav likes to say, there's no speed without power, no power without calories.
That is very, very true. Yeah, exactly.
Going back to your typical threshold session, what are some of the mistakes that some people might make on a session like this?
I would say overdoing the first rep. Um, the thing about uh, threshold, um, and it's the same thing with the zone two ride, is if you go too hard too soon, you can mobilize a different system than you're wanting to, right? So it's like we do on zone two rides, where sometimes Luke will prescribe something hard at the end of the zone two ride, but you don't want to do it at the beginning, because once you're mobilizing those sugars, it's hard to put that back on the shelf, right? So if the goal of the session is mobilization of free fatty acids or something like that, which is generally more common with zone two. We don't think about it as much anymore in terms of mobilization of free fatty acids, and more to do with just training mitochondrial density in zone two. But once you do go above that and you're utilizing more lactate and more things like that above zone two, it's hard to put that back on the shelf. But I think that's why we do it at the end of the session once everything else is in the bank. But I think it's very similar as well with threshold sessions. Is you don't want to go too hard at the beginning, right? It's actually better to kind of build through that if you start a little bit on the conservative end and then get better as you're going along, right? And you also warm up at those systems, right? Because it's hard to expect to be, yeah, just functioning at 100% in terms of your lungs, everything on the first rep. You're going to warm everything up as you go. So starting on the conservative end, if you're trying to aim for a power, starting 10 watts lower is probably not going to hurt you in the end. And then, yeah, I feel good. Okay, I'm going to bump it up a little bit more. And then by the end, you've done a solid session. But if you go out way too hard and then you have to back it off, and then you're like, oh, I don't feel good, maybe I should just stop this session. It's better to progress through it a little bit. So I'd say that's my biggest tip in terms of kind of what I've learned from it. But yeah, it's a lot of people make the mistake of going too hard early on. And yeah, also kind of making sure that if you are going to do that, doing it at the end of your session, as opposed to starting the session with threshold and then trying to fit in zone 2 at the end, because you're going to get, I don't know what the percentage is, but you're going to get a lot less from the zone 2 than if you had done that at the beginning.
So you would actually do a longer, if you had one of those longer sessions, you would actually front load the zone 2 and then go into your threshold session.
Yeah, same thing on those threshold rides. So if I've got a 3-hour ride, but we have 6 times 12 minutes, I'll do the first hour totally just FFA. We call it FFA. It's because you're mainly burning free fatty acids. So I'll do the first 2 hour or hour and a half, whatever FFA, get into the set, and then cool down at the end. I wouldn't start with the reps and then do that at the end. I try and make sure that I'm ending the session with the threshold and then a small cool down before the end, just because that's kind of how it works to get the most out of every system.
And I guess from a durability standpoint, that's also a good habit to get into, and having the punch even late in the session versus giving it all at the start and then withering away on the back end.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think if the goal of the session is purely a high intensity, then it sometimes makes sense to go into it fresh. But something like a threshold session, and if you're not feeling too fatigued, it does make sense, I think, to front load it a little bit. It's good to fight that fatigue resistance as well while you're training those systems, because obviously you're never going to feel perfect an hour and a half into a race, right? So it is good to kind of learn how to ride at that intensity after some fatigue.
So what does that turn out to be over a week of riding? How many kilometers might you get in?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing is about riding here is it is rare to get a ride above like 26 kilometers an hour average.
Let's talk about time then.
Time, okay. Yeah, around 10 to 12 hours a week, I'd say, on the bike. I've done 22-hour weeks on the bike. But in terms of just a sustainable every week kind of being consistent as possible, yeah, around 10 to 12, I think, is kind of where I find my max without going too much into the hole of fatigue. So
okay, let's talk about running, and then after I want to talk about some respiratory training with you as well. So
sure.
on the run, how does the volume, like again in hours and time, contrast with the bike?
Yeah, so running, there's a couple days a week where I'll actually do doubles, and those would generally be on a day where I have a big a run workout, but then I'll also do a frequency in the morning, kind of just as a way to add volume and wake up the system, because it's not going to put that much fatigue on you just to run 7K or easy in a zone 2 in the morning. And it's not always pushing zone 2 too, not always in the upper end. Obviously, if you're stressing the upper end, you're not too fatigued, you're going to get the most benefit, I think, because you're actually just training that mitochondria as much as you can. You're stressing it as much as possible at the upper end. But yeah, just kind of waking up the system in the morning is more what those frequency would be. And then I'll run more of a workout session in the evening, like a tempo run or something like that. So I'm running probably 7 or 8 times a week, I would say. But again, that'll change throughout the year. Yeah, and then I would say I'm running around 85 kilometers a week on average. Um, so not a lot, if you're looking at it in terms of like what a runner would do. But obviously it's added on with the biking and swimming, so it's enough. um, but yeah, and then for those days as well, there's about 2 sessions a week where I would go hard. Usually a Tuesday would be more of a again, more of a threshold type run, or a long tempo or whatever we decide it's going to be. And then Friday would be kind of a track. We'll do a little bit over speed as well, or above race pace. Um, but yeah, it'll change throughout the year too if we identify something as a limiter. The thing about training under Luke and Andrew is that there's never really it changes constantly, because what we're doing is trying to achieve a stimulus, and then once we think that that is being trained well enough, then we'll switch to something else, because it's about always trying to improve something. You're not just blindly doing, and people are doing threshold, so we got to do threshold. It's not like that, right? It's about stressing different systems, and then as they train, then something else becomes the new limiter, and so you're training that. So yeah, there will be times where maybe I don't need to do threshold for a while. I need to just focus on my zone two, right? Then we'll focus on that. Or yeah, like you mentioned, respiratory. Sometimes respiratory will be the main focus of the whole session. That's the only thing that really matters. So the session's based around respiratory. And yeah, lots of my run sessions are actually based off of the way that I'm breathing. It's limited by how well I can breathe at yeah. Well, Luke will have a run where I do it's all based on breathing. So for me, I know that above breathing 2 steps in and 2 steps out is basically where I'll hit my threshold, and it's pretty accurate for me. So we'll know, yeah, do this run based on threes and threes pace, and so then I'll know I can't go any faster than what I can hold 3 and 3 at, and eventually you'll feel like you need a panic breath, or you'll need to increase obviously your breath rate to maintain the output, and then you're going too fast, right? So then you got to slow back down, maintain the 3 and 3, and it's a good way to stay conscious of your breathing. Breathe deliberately, breathe full range of motion, but then also it's a good way to manage intensity. So lots of my races too, I'll start out at a certain breath rate and then go, it'll ramp throughout the race or whatever. So it's a good way to manage intensity, but also breathing.
That's really interesting, and I'd heard Luke talk about it on the podcast previously about the breathing. What do you feel like is it too simple to say 4-4 you're probably in zone 2, 3-3 you're probably in the middle, 2-2 you're probably around threshold, and then if you go above then you're in the red zone? Would that make sense as an overall idea for people to get out with, and like you said, start actually auto regulating based on how you're breathing, or is there huge variations from one person to the next?
Yes, there's huge variations from one person to the next. So yeah, do not do not do it based on what I just said. That is something that we've just learned from looking at my breathing, like I said, 8 times a week for 8 years. So that's what I know, and it's pretty accurate. Like I can, if you take away my heart rate monitor, take away my watch, take away everything, even take away my Moxie, I could tell you every number and be within 5% every day, right? And that's just because I've had those things so close to me for so long that and we've actually experimented with that on workouts. And Luke will take my phone and be like, "How many watts are you pushing? Like, what's your heart rate? What's your Moxie?" And I'll tell him, and it's within 5 heartbeats, within 15 watts, and within a couple percent in the Moxie. Like I know what I'm doing for that, and so it's the same thing with breathing. Is we just kind of know at this point what I need to do, but it's going to be different for everyone. So obviously, if you generally have a smaller lung capacity or a smaller utilization of oxygen, then you're going to have to increase your breath rate, right? So yeah, don't go off of my numbers, but you'll have to learn your own, obviously. I just from doing Breatheway, and before Breatheway was a thing, we used to use an old device, Spyro Tiger. it was a lot harder to use, and the devices were super expensive. But I've been doing that since I was 12 or 13. Or actually, yeah, right when I started with Luke, basically the first week I started using those devices. So my lung volume is actually one of my strengths. So because of that, I can do it. I can do a 2 and 2 or even breathe a 4 and 4 for a pretty fast 10K. But even in my races, because obviously you're running so in such close quarters with other athletes, I do notice like how much more air I can put through my body with every stride, just because my lung volume is so much larger, and also I've trained the functional capacity of it so much more. So that's actually kind of a strength for me. Um, but yeah, it's something that everyone needs to develop and kind of learn. But I think also just doing those sets for so long where I'm focusing on my breathing has helped a lot. So yeah, that's kudos to Luke and Andrew for that one.
Do you feel like it's an advantage on race day being able to maybe be more calm about how you're breathing, listening around to your competitors and how they're breathing, noticing certain patterns and informing you as to maybe what move to make in the race?
For sure, yes, I have definitely made decisions based on how other people are breathing. You can tell when people start panting that that's usually not a good thing. And then also for me, I think just in a race, I'm able to analyze exactly how I'm feeling based on my breathing. If I'm really like, I'm holding this pace and I'm like, I don't know if I can hold this, might need to slow down, or like, you know, I have, uh, like for me, I know that I can switch to a 1 and 1 breathing, which is obviously extremely fast at if you're running 90 RPM, and you're every two, that's like 90 breaths a minute. That's a lot, right? But I know that I can run about 1,500 meters at a 1 and 1 pace before I'm gonna totally implode, right? And so yeah, breathing, I can know when to switch above my 2 and 2 pace to my 1 and 1 or whatever in the race, and then I'm able to time my effort as well. So it's something that's really um, helped me in terms of pacing in a race, and also just being kind of cognizant of how I'm feeling, because if I know I'm struggling at this breathing, it's a good surrogate for what's going on inside your body, I think, right? It's not extremely scientific, but breathing is breathing, and you need to breathe more as you're using more oxygen, right? So it's a really good surrogate, I think, for kind of how everything is responding to what you're doing. So I've definitely made decisions in races based on my breathing for sure.
And I think the link between perception and the actual difficulty of what you're doing and the link to breathing. We know that if you breathe faster, you're going to feel like it's a little bit harder. So being able
Yeah.
to slow it down when you need to, and being able to, I think, just have control, right? For a lot of, at least in my experience, some people just have an on and off switch for the breathing. Whereas as you train it and as you develop it and as you spend time being aware of it, like you were mentioning, you're gonna it's like you have new dials that pop up, and there you can fine tune them more and more. First you start with a dial that has a 1, 2, and a 3, but soon it becomes a 0 to 10, and then everything in the middle. And I think that's one part that is interesting to me regarding respiratory training, is that it's just another aspect of your body that you learn to better manage. And then the
Totally.
link between managing your breathing and then having control over it, knowing how it functions and how you can use it to your own advantage, I think at the very least just gives you a lot more confidence as to how you're going to do, how you're going to behave during a certain performance, and how you can potentially, even like you said, gain information from your own breathing patterns, other people's breathing patterns, and
Yes.
again use that as a strength.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the respiratory system is probably the most overlooked system in endurance sports, in my opinion. Just because I think we put so much emphasis on being strong, doing gym work, doing, just riding for a long time to get strong. Like people just talk about, you need strong legs, right? But what does that actually mean? And then what does it actually mean to be fit cardiac wise and respiratory wise. But in terms of breathing, I think people just, they just assume you gotta just breathe more, and everyone knows how to breathe. But the thing is I think 95% of professional athletes don't even really know how to breathe or have never been taught how to breathe properly. Um, and that's been apparent to me with doing more high level races or even training with some high level athletes is yeah, just and I mean, it's not their fault, right? They've just never been taught exactly how to breathe. Um, I think that's something that like literally you should learn in school as a kid, is just like proper breathing, because there's so many people who don't know how to breathe and they panic or they have a panic attack because they just don't know how to breathe properly, right? Even in cold water, you see lots of age groupers hyperventilate. It's just something that could be avoided if people just learn how to breathe as a kid. And yeah, so I think, yeah, like you said, it's just once you learn how, excuse me, there's just so much more um, to you can just go further and down that path of kind of learning how to breathe. And like you said, you get more dials and more things to improve on and more ways to breathe better. So
talk about the nature of your respiratory training with the breatheway, and if you use any other modalities in your respiratory training as well.
um so yeah, like I talked about earlier, lots of our sessions will be just and during activity will be focused on breathing, like the running, like I talked about the 4 and 4, 5 and 5, 6 and 6, whatever you want to do. In terms of the actual breatheway, lots of the sessions that Luke will have us do will start with a step test, just like you might do on a bike, with gradually increasing breaths per minute.
Mm.
And then once you've identified your balance point on the breath rate for the day, then you can also just do a workout based on that. So some days will be a volume based session, 30 minutes total, let's say, with 5-minute intervals at the maximum volume you can hold at a given breath rate. And then other ones might be a more functional session. It's very similar to training the intervals on the bike, whatever you want to do. Yeah, it's about training the overall volume and structure of your lungs, and then also your functional ability. So even for me, my volume is very good, but so that's something that we're training right now, that was identified in my last assessment, is my actual functional capacity is not lower than it's been, but as my lung volume has increased, we now need to increase my functional capacity in my lungs to utilize the full volume. So more functional sets on the breatheway is what I'm doing. And then also just thinking about it on the bike, making sure that I'm maintaining large volume while I'm breathing fast on the bike at those higher intensity intervals. So yeah, there's structural based and functional based sets, just like in any other area of the sport.
Yeah, it's an important distinction that you bring up, and I guess that's something that I've been introduced to via Andrew and his the whole, I guess, the whole crew that came out of Jörg Feldman back in the day, and those I guess this way of approaching training, and then respiratory training more specifically, having the spirometry to look at your lung volume, and then having some tests. And that's actually something that I've introduced now with my athletes using the breatheway as well, is that step test, right, that Luke talks about. And just again, it gives you a good idea as to how well you can control breathing and up to what frequency. And then I guess having a measure of improvement over time as well. And if you can be, I guess, intellectually honest with yourself and not drastically reduce the volume that you're breathing just to go, just to go at very high frequencies, it can really do the trick. When you talk about functional sets for with the breatheway, talk to us about the kind of frequencies you work with. Is it specific frequencies based on your current abilities? Is it more race specific frequencies for either the bike or the run? Do you have different sessions for the bike, for the run, etc.?
So that's the cool thing about breatheway is since you're only looking at the lungs specifically, and you're not actually using your legs or anything, you're not held back by your ability to put out a certain amount of exertion. and so you're able to go solely on the breathing, right? And stress that system to a maximum. On the bike, um, let's say on the bike, if I'm breathing 6 liter breaths and I'm doing 40 breaths a minute, that's a lot of liters. I think that's that 240 breaths a minute, something like that.
Mm.
Or sort of 240 liters a minute
Mm.
of total VE. But yeah, to do that, to push that on the if I'm just breathing, I can actually do more than that, right? I can breathe 50 breaths a minute at 6 liters. And so knowing that I can do that, I've usually for me on the breatheway, I think we found that up to 55 breaths a minute at 6 liters is kind of my upper functional limit, which is I think that's close to 280 liters a minute, which is a lot. But I can't push myself that hard on the bike for 30 minutes, right? It would destroy me for a week. So to be able to do that solely on the breatheway, I can stress that system to a max. And then when I'm riding and I'm doing I'm pushing, 400 watts and I'm doing 60 breaths, 40 breaths a minute at 6 liters, my lungs are not even stressed, right? It's normal for them. So that's the cool thing about the breatheway is that you can just focus on the respiratory system. So you're not actually worried about overdoing your legs or anything like that. So yeah, you can really dial it in, and yeah, you can learn. You can track the progress over time with the step tests. Um, Same thing as what we used to do on the bike. What we still do on the bike. But that was one of the first things that Luke taught me was before every workout day when I was just starting with Balance Point is now it's all digital on our phone and we got all the sensors and everything. But at home, Luke used to have me before I did any ride, I would start with a step test and I had a piece of paper and I would write down my heart rate with my wattage and then I'd finish the next step and I'd write down my heart rate and my wattage, heart rate and wattage. It was before I was using the Moxie every day, obviously, when I was just 13 and riding at home on my trainer. But we would watch my heart rate compared to my wattage. And obviously, generally, as you're getting fitter, your heart rate will go down, especially when you're improving so much at a 13, 14-year-old age. Now there's so much more to look at just because there's less. You're looking for, at this point, I'm looking for 1 or 2 percenters in terms of those improvements. Yeah, and we would just analyze, heart rate versus watts, and then we know whether this is a good day or a bad day. And if it was a bad day, I would just do, zone 2 for as long as I could. Or if it was a good day, we'd be like, all right, let's stress the system totally to a maximum and do really high intensity intervals and get this upper end pushed as high as we can. Same thing with the breathway, right? If you're struggling functionally on the day to hold high breath rates, but you have decent volume, then you might as well do the session and work on your volume, whatever. But then on days where you're like, yeah, I'm feeling really good, my lungs are recovered, I'm ready to go, you can really stress that upper end as well. So it's kind of the same thing throughout kind of just every aspect of swim, bike, run, and breathing. They're at the end of the day, yeah, like Andrew says all the time, it comes down to structural and functional improvements. And when one is trained, then you need to work on the other one until it becomes the limiter. And it's just a constant, balancing act. So that's kind of how we have approached my breathway training.
That's really, really interesting to have all the details on that. Talk about that, I guess that warm-up protocol that you guys use. Do you still use that to see to assess your we could call it active readiness on the day?
Yes. Now, usually on Mondays and Wednesdays in the winter, especially when we're the summer, we won't do it every workout just because we're riding outside a lot. And so there's other things that we'll look at for that. But in terms of in the winter time, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'll do a step test every Monday and Wednesday to start the ride. 10-minute warm up, whatever we do. And then we go into a step test, which takes around 15, 18 minutes, depending on how many steps you're doing. We'll do 3-minute steps. Usually it takes about 2 minutes for the heart rate to kind of find an even kind of place where it's going to be at that wattage. And then, yeah, we'll write it down with the wattage, obviously. Now it's all on the phone in a document, and we graph it. So I have a new graph for each year, but I have 8 years worth of heart rate and watt graphs. And so now we can see kind of the line of best fit, and then how we make this decisions now. Part of it would be with my heart rate. So once it's graphed, we know that if the heart rates are above the line, you're having a good day. If it's below the line, generally you're having a higher heart rate, which could mean you're fatigued. The thing is it's balancing. You have to talk now. It's easier when you're 13, 14 and you're just improving so much that lower heart rate generally means is a good thing. Whereas now sometimes I'll have days where you're so cardiac fatigued that lower heart rates just mean you just got less output for the day because you're just so tired, right? And so that's why now we have things like Moxie, and we sometimes use VO2 Master for that as well, and we can analyze it all and make better decisions. But I do still do a step test before every bike workout, just to kind of see where I am, track improvement. And there's times where we'll still see a huge jump and be like, wow, you're obviously getting fitter. We can tell. And yeah, so over the years, we've been able to see the graph it'll just switch exponentially over time. And yeah, so I still do that twice a week before every session.
What wattages are you going to be pushing on those different steps, and what does that correspond to on your intensity distribution, whether we talk about thresholds or zones, whatever makes sense for you?
So yeah, back in the day, when we were looking mainly at heart rate and I didn't have as many sensors to kind of determine this, my threshold sessions would be basically just based on heart rate, which I think is still one of the best metrics to use because it is more of a global look at what's going on. Things like lactate can change a lot based on kind of what you're eating, how warmed up you are, your hormones, just everything, right? It's still obviously a metric that you can look at, but I think just in terms of a day-to-day kind of consistency, heart rate, you can learn a lot from it if you really know what you're looking for. And so, yeah, I would do kind of a warm-up with that, and then we would identify my balance point heart rate of the day. And so I would do a workout based off of, if Luke said BP minus 10, then I would just subtract 10 from that and do the workout based on that. And obviously it'll change throughout the workout what we're based on what intensity we're going for. But then now we kind of know what my heart rates are going to be like no matter what. And so now we also have things like obviously wattage, and Moxie is kind of the most useful one that we've been using in recent times, just because I think it's obviously looking at what's going on directly inside the muscle, and so you can see kind of the impact in real time. Heart rate has a lag, right? You're seeing what happened 3 minutes ago, so it's kind of hard to make decisions like in the moment based on that, and that's kind of the beauty of the Moxie. So that's why we've used it that way. But then, yeah, we've also, if I'm noticing that, let's say we do a step test and it seems like I'm fatigued in some way, then yeah, we'll change the goal of the session for intensity and do a lower intensity session to try and achieve at least some kind of a stimulus for the day, right? And at the end of the day, 90% of what you're doing is always going to be structural, a zone 2 type of thing anyways. And so you need to find time to do those things. So it's not a bad thing if you're having a kind of a fatigue day. There's always something to train, right?
That makes a lot of sense. If we
Yeah.
zoom out now, we talked about many of the aspects of your training. How's your season been this year?
Yeah, this was, I guess, kind of a bit of a breakthrough season for me. It was my first year racing World Cups. I also did my debut World Series, which had its ups and had its major downs as well. But I learned a lot, and I think I'm much better prepared for my next one because of that. Yeah, I raced four World Cups this year. I was able to get my Olympic qualification ranking to 76 in the world, which is better than I thought I was going to do starting the year, which is awesome. Um, and yeah, I like to think that I'm kind of in the running for Paris 2024. And so yeah, 2023 until spring 2024, it's kind of just that's all that matters right now. So every day is just kind of based on that, and trying to get one step closer. Yeah, I had my best finish in the World Cup was 16th this year. So it'll be essential for me to start getting some top fives or even podiums in the 2023 and 2024. But yeah, I think I just learned so much throughout the year. And I kind of growing up, I didn't have through my early professional career and even junior career, I didn't have the funding that I needed to be able to race as much as some of the other guys. So I've been catching up in terms of my experience, but I think I have so much backlog training that I'll finish a race and I'm like, I don't I feel like if there was a race the next weekend, I was like, oh yeah, like I wish I could do this again tomorrow because I learned so much that race. Like if I could just redo that, I know I could go faster tomorrow. Like I got so much just experience because there's little things, right? Especially in ITU, you learn where to put down the effort, it's just so tactical, right? And obviously you're spent at the finish line every time, but yeah, just learning how to be a smarter racer is something that I'm learning because I think my strength, Luke likes to say my strength is my strength. And so yeah, if it was a 4-day straight stage race, I just know I'd be getting better throughout the race. So for me, it's kind of been how much can I race? Because I've had so much time, so many years of just training that how much can I race? How much experience can I get so that we're getting the improvements that I want, and then we're ready for the the big races that are just starting now in my career.
Well, in that case, I wish you many, many races in 2023 and
Thank
beyond,
you.
and lots of success as well. Brock, it's been a pleasure having you on. Where can people follow your adventures?
I guess the best way would probably be on Instagram. My handle is Brock_Hoel. Yeah, I try and keep everyone updated on there. And yeah, you can also tune in on triathlonlive.tv. I'll be racing obviously a lot this year. So yeah, give me a shout or a cheer or whatever. Any and all is appreciated.
Awesome. Well, the link is in the description, and I want to thank you again for coming on the show and sharing all the details about your training. It's been very insightful, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. It's been a pleasure.
All right, talk to you soon, then.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, please take a few moments to leave a written review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you want to watch this episode again, you can find the full video recording on my YouTube channel. You'll also find hundreds of hours of free content, all my podcasts, my thoughts of the day, structured presentations, and more. So don't wait, go subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.